Hello and welcome to all our listeners. This is Broaden Our Horizons, and today we are recording podcast number 2 with Sandra.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, nice to have you here. Thanks. Sandra and I will be speaking about a variety of things today. We will be learning a little bit about her, where she's from, what she's done so far with her life. And she will also be speaking about people who inspire her, people in her life who she has met and who have brought great value to you, I would say. What do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So if we could start off and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Sandra, as you've told everybody. I'm from Portugal, from a town called Amadora, which is very near to our capital. It's like a very reasonably big habitational city.
What did you do before here? Because I remember you told me that you studied two different studies for a bit, and you work as a teacher.
Yeah, I worked as a tutor. Teacher is a bit of a stretch, perhaps. I came out of high school wanting very much to go into health. So health sciences, and so I chose, it wasn't my first alternative, but I was like, maybe this is a good choice for now. I chose to do nutrition and dietetics, and I was 2 years there, and at the end of the first months I was feeling already that it wasn't working that well. I didn't like it that much. Apart from that, I enjoyed pharmacology, which came like in the beginning of the second year. And by that point, I was like, really, I have to find a way out of this, some alternative, something that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
And pharmacology was the way out because I enjoyed it, and I was like, then I'm gonna try pharmaceutical sciences. And at the same time, let's call it as a challenge, I had to start working as well. I had to start a part-time. It was really important economically. So it was a year of big changes, and a year of trying to adapt a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, trying not to freak out.
Keep it cool.
Exactly.
Keep it cool.
Yeah, I mean, inside at that point I might be freaking out, but I really tried not to. And one of these friends just told me, look, I have a person looking for a tutor for some kids in this study center. Why don't you try it? It was a challenge for me. It was different. I had never worked with kids like that.
And I know also that you've done quite a few volunteering projects, right?
I had some volunteer opportunities, some small volunteer opportunities, like in church while I was growing up, some small stuff. But I would say that the first official opportunity to do some volunteer work was during nutrition, the dietetics and nutrition university. It's a foundation. In Portugal we have like an association against AIDS, and then this was a foundation connected to that, and this foundation would go to universities because the purpose was to gather small teams of students, of university students, to then go into high schools or earlier years of school to bring some training about interpersonal skills, but more specifically about sexuality, about prevention. We would go to these kids. I'm not sure exactly anymore, but at least twice a month and sometimes once every week on a certain class they would have. And we would go there and we would try and do some activities that would promote their willingness to talk about their issues, you know. And at some point we would just have some workshops about how to put a condom on,
Yeah.
how to where to go to get the pill, what diseases can you get from unprotected sex, how important it is to communicate when you go into a relationship. What are your needs? What do you need when communicating? And so uh, this foundation would try and bring this sort of stuff to kids in a way that would make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's what I was
safe.
thinking. Yeah. Because it's also not their teachers, their
No,
teachers
yeah.
that they see every day, they have math with or
Exactly.
biology and, it are
Exactly.
university students, and that's a really great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool because it's people that almost look like them. It's like
Right.
people that might be 4 or 5 years older, maybe a bit more depending, but we are close in a way,
Yeah.
and we understand each other differently. Sometimes it was very simple stuff, like small workshop about my feelings, or being in a circle and being comfortable sharing.
Yeah.
And I mean, for some of these kids, especially for boys in some of these ages, it's a challenge to acknowledge that they can share and that they can feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm talking about boys because of course they at their age they have more difficulty generally because our culture leads to this.
Yeah.
They have more difficulty than the girls.
Yeah.
Girls would share much more
Expressing
easily.
themselves and opening up. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was really, really interesting. And for me, it was learning experience. I wasn't used to this sort of exposure and teamwork and talking to other people like this, like speaking as if I knew something in a way, you know. And so it was very challenging and very nice at the same time.
And do you think that also influenced you to start working on other volunteering projects, or did they show up? Did you actively look for it?
Yeah, actually, through church, I was in a small team. Like we were available for things that would be needed from time to time, or preparing some activity for the youngsters there. And at some point, we started working with the food bank. And at some point, I became responsible for organizing this campaign, and I've been doing that since then. Like this year, I had a break because of COVID.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, from that first experience, then I think I had a break because I don't really remember specifically anything else. But like when I changed into pharmaceutical sciences, at some point I noticed there was um, sort of an organization that did reconstruction or then fixing up some parts of homes of people that were, I mean, either in need or were, imagine, they were so the house would be so cluttered that they would be in risk of losing their children because they wouldn't have conditions to have their children there,
Right.
or they were ill and they for years they hadn't been able to work or whatever. Actually the purpose of this is to change and try and change a bit the lives of the people who live there.
Yeah. What got you interested in volunteering?
With my Catholic upbringing, there was always that speech of we have to give, we have to try and be useful to society, we have to care. It's a way of being useful, and I try to do things with volunteer work that are useful for the community. Value the possibility of doing something useful and learning from that.
Yeah.
This is not entirely giving, it's for sure learning from that because I want to be a better person for this society.
Yeah.
In a way, because I know that I as most people, I have lots of ground to cover still as well.
Yeah. And you've told me that you have people in your family who have volunteered before also, or at least have been big contributors to societal well-being.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, my aunt was, well, she spends big parts of her life doing mission work in Africa. She came. Well, my family, most of my family comes from a village in central Portugal. She was born around the 40s or 50s. In the village in central Portugal, things were not great. You know, like you had to work on the land. You had few opportunities. And she wasn't an exception, and she, on top of that, she was a woman. So she and most of her family, they had like the opportunity to study the first 4 years of school, like primary school.
Right.
And then they would be expected to work at home, like cook, work the land. And so she was expected either to marry reasonably early, or just stay home and care for her parents when they would grow old, and care for the land, you know. And she had that sort of life conditions where she wouldn't even like have shoes to wear to school. It was really all very, very controlled and all very limited, you know. The idea of profit or the idea of hope for the future would be much more focused on buying grounds to cultivate more, you know, buying land to cultivate. And so she just really wanted to broaden her horizons. She wanted it. She from early on, maybe from when she was 12, 13, she really wanted to join the church, and she wanted to learn more, to do something more for the world. And so, against her parents' will, she did go into the church. She became a nun. She got the chance to continue studying. She went like into 12th grade. She actually figured, she understood, she found out that she actually was more intelligent than she was led to to feel she was.
Good for her.
Yeah, she was very much excited by this, and she wanted to do more. You know, she wanted to go out to explore a bit of the world, and she, for a few years, I think, um, she was in Italy studying. She was preparing to finish her entrance in the convent. And then, as a nun, she had the chance to go to Africa to do some mission work there. Her convent has homes in some of these countries. They have like support centers for the communities, and so she just went, and she spent most of her life trying to do something there. You know, like working with the kids, or
Yeah.
contributing to the community in some way, teaching. I mean, at some point it was interesting. I mean, not that interesting, just challenging maybe. That at some point, while she was very much active, she became very ill. She was like losing a bit of control over her body. It was a hard time for her, because she went to some doctors and she couldn't even really figure out what was going on. Um, Finally, after coming to Portugal, after going to several doctors, they found out she had a brain tumor.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, it was benign, but she did had to go. She did have to go through surgery and recovery.
Right.
And all this time, for her, in a way, it was time wasted that she could be doing active stuff, you know.
Right.
And this was almost 30 years ago, actually. Like around the time I was born, she was somehow having the surgery and recovering. Um, Yeah, and after that, as soon as she was okay, she talked to her superiors, and she was like, "Okay, can I go back?"
Let me back. Yeah.
Exactly. And she went back, and she was there a few years more. It's challenging because she would go and she would have like 1 or 2 weeks back every 2 years. This is what I remember
Wow.
from her. Um, I remember like writing some letters to her. We would exchange a few letters, but that was it. Like we have to remember that phone calls were hard at
Yeah, of
that time as
course.
well.
Yeah.
When I think of her, and when I think of this time, I always remember how communication was different.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
really, really interesting to think about.
And what is it about her that you value? I mean, what is it about her that inspires you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this willingness to leave and this willingness to uh, imagine a world out there bigger than yourself. I mean, she was never properly angry at the upbringing she had. Sometimes it made her sad and for sure a bit frustrated, but she didn't become the angry person that complained about it. She became the person who wanted to explore because she knew that what she was living wasn't enough. She didn't
Right.
know what was out there, but she knew that what she was living wasn't enough. And I actually valued that a lot, this sort of very active and still very positive way of going into the world. And yeah, it's inspiring. She recognizes the challenges she's gone through. She recognizes she still has work to do. She's like 70 now, and she still tells me like I still have so much work to do on my personal way of being,
Wow.
uh, because it, life, if we can be like complete adventurers, and still life doesn't cure all,
Of course. Yeah.
and I admire this, this self-awareness, this humbleness,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I would like to I mean, get to 70 and be able to say, yeah, I've done good work, but I understand that I'm so incomplete still.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you know.
And this constant pursuit of
Yeah,
improvement, self improvement, also, right?
yeah,
Societal improvement, but also self improvement. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. It's. I mean, it's admirable.
Yeah, definitely. And from what I understand, there's one more woman that you would like to speak about who has also been someone that you have admired greatly, from what I understand.
Yeah, sure. This person, on the other hand, hasn't had that much of a volunteer experience. I
Mm-hmm.
can't say that. That's why I want to bring her up. But I want to bring her into the conversation because she shares um, this sort of adventurous way of living as well. I mean, these two people have two different ways of being adventurous, but
Right.
still being people who take a chance positively towards the world, and this person I'm going to talk about is called Orlando. She is now in her 70s as well. She was in my life from before I was born, so I can't even tell you a story about how I met her.
Yeah.
She was there. She was just there.
Always there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she was born in Cabo Verde, which was one of the colonies Portugal had. She had a poor family. She had to work since very early in her childhood, and she didn't go to school. She didn't have that chance. She just, I mean, she was brought up in a space where you are expected to be um, some kind of an object. She was a woman, she was really brought up to either work solely for her family or marry at some point. I mean, um, that was that's the expectation generally, right? Especially in that time. She was born into a context of power towards men. You know,
Yeah.
she wasn't expected to be much, to do much, to
Right.
whatever. You know, um, and so she, in a certain way, didn't fit this mold because she wanted more. She wanted to try and come to Europe, to Portugal, to have a better life, to improve her opportunities. And she actually, despite this wish, um, she actually, well, despite it isn't exclusive, mutually exclusive. She fell in love at same, of course, as we all. Oh my God, she fell in love, and I'm describing how, of course, everybody can fall in love. I mean,
it's beautiful.
Oh
it's
my
beautiful, Sandra.
As if falling in love wasn't something that everybody knows, you know. Okay, she fell in love. She was always very self-aware, very confident in her capabilities, and she was aware that she didn't want to depend on a man. She didn't want to have to give explanations to a man. And again, we have to consider the context she was coming from. She wasn't coming from a context of equality, and she had her first child. She didn't marry, of course, and she ended up coming to Portugal before being able to bring her child with her. It was a boy. And she came, she tried a few opportunities. And so she started her life here, well, there in Portugal. She ended up falling in love again later. She had 2 more children. She didn't marry that person either, even though she loved him very much as well. And she just plowed forward. You know, she worked in a few very hard jobs to work, but even in with work, um, she didn't. She stayed until the point that it made sense. You know, she knew that she had to care for her children. She knew that she wanted stability, but at the same time, she wouldn't ever give up her respect for herself. You know, and for her quality of work. And so when she felt it was time and it didn't make sense anymore, she would go.
Pack her bags and leave. Good for her. Wow.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do.
Not at all. She has been like this courageous person, this brave person all her life. I don't know if she's aware of this fully, because she doesn't avoid giving herself a compliment, like if it makes sense, if she knows she worked for it, she is not shy about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if she has the slightest idea of what she has done. She never ended up finishing school. She, to this day, she might read some very simple words. She doesn't read. Her knowledge about the world and about connection, about respect for yourself and for others, and this was something that she carried with herself. I mean, she came to Portugal when we didn't have that many African people here. She came to Portugal when racism was even more evident, you know, when women were considered even less than they are now. You know?
Yeah.
So she was a black woman coming into a country that well, we are welcoming, but to a certain extent, you know, we have our challenges as well, and that time more so. She managed to bring up like 2 very respectful men, you know, men that are aware of their place in the world, that understand that they are not better than women. They understand that they are equal, you know, and she brought up a very determined woman, you know.
Yeah.
And I can see so much of Orlando in her children. They are all very aware of themselves and how their faults contribute or not to the world, and how their qualities contribute to the world.
Right.
And this is where my aunt and Orlando meet in a way. They understand that the world is bigger than themselves, you know, and they try to, in whatever way they can, to build something bigger, not opulent, but something that contributes, something that's positive, that's confident, you know. My aunt went to Africa and she tried to build something there. And Orlando came from Africa and she built something here. And she built a family, you know. Her basic, like, she departed always from the idea of respect and hard work and care. She's very loving. I mean, if being independent doesn't mean not being loving.
Of course, I completely agree.
So
there are a lot of commonalities between your aunt and Orlinda, and I think a lot of traits in both of them that you really admire. I'm curious if you think that these traits are something that we can learn, or do you think that this is something innate to a person?
I would say that perhaps what sparks this in both of them is something more innate. I believe it's completely possible to learn this.
Yeah.
But you do have to be exposed to this experience in a way.
Yeah.
You know, some people innately bring this up in themselves and into the world, but they had to have some sort of experience that led them to this understanding, or something that changed their minds in such a way that led them to this.
I have a last question. Do you think that these women are aware of what they mean to you, or at least how, I would maybe use the word inspiring they are to you?
Perhaps my aunt not so much. Orlando, yes. I have told her several times. Several times. Every chance I get, I tell her. Because she's a very, very important person to me. I mean, strangely, even though my aunt is my aunt, actually I had more time to connect with Orlando throughout my life.
Right.
And so I think at some point, perhaps I might invest a bit in letting my aunt know more that she is this valid person.
I think that's also very important. And I think that's also a positive trait that someone can have, right? Being able to appreciate others and share with them that you appreciate them. And I think that that's always a beautiful thing to do. Okay, Sandra, that was great. Is there anything you would like to add or mention? Or
no, just thank you for having me. It was a really cool conversation.
Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to those of you who are listening, and you will be hearing from me next week. Cześć!